Well, here we are again. What we're looking at today is another 1883, as you might have guessed from the title of the video. And this one is a frostie. You can see there's a nice frosty finish on it, and it's in pretty good condition considering how old this is. But if you jiggle it, you can see it doesn't quite work. There's something going on there. Yeah. And it seems to do the same dance each time, pretty well identically. So there's something there following through. If we now look here, we've cleared all the cogs out of the watch, and I'm just going to mount the top plate back on, and there's nothing else actually on the watch at all. If we bring back the balance system and put it back onto the watch, that should give us an indication of this system being completely isolated now from the rest of the components, except for the bottom jewel and the system itself, which consists of the wheel, the pivots, and the spring, and so on. So that is shimmering absolutely perfectly. There is absolutely nothing wrong with that. That should just run, really. And if I turn this upside down, I know you can't see it, but I guarantee you it is also running. It is shimmering, but it's not shimmering quite so well. So that is possibly one of the problems we've got. Maybe not. So you take a hold of your spokes here and just lift it, and just see if you've got any end shake at all. It's not terrible, but it seems okay. If I turn it upside down, it does work okay. So I'm going to take the wheel off. So taking the wheel off, just grabbing all of it around about the middle there, and this one is particularly slack, and usually if you push something down here it will release it, but it's released itself anyway. One of the things I'm going to check is firstly just that this little roller jewel there is actually not sticking, not moving. It does appear to be pretty solid. It's not waggling about anyway, which is something that you definitely don't want. So another thing to check is that the jewel actually fits into the fork. So this is the kind of thing that you expect would you not? But not necessarily, because people do all kinds of things with 100-year-old watches. They put all kinds of wrong components on and so on. And that does fit, the jewel does fit the fork. One thing that I do see though there is that the safety pin is bent very slightly backwards, and it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to be straight. These forks actually have 2 screws on the top, and you can slide them back and forth to make an adjustment, so you don't really need to bend that pin back. But upon examining the roller table, you can see that little nick of metal just there on the roller table. Well, that would definitely cause that kind of problem. Absolutely, definitely. It might even cause the safety pin to be pushed back. Right, so I'll have to do something about that first. I used a little diamond burr just to try and get the nub of the thing off. Then I used a piece of emery to try and smooth it out a bit, and it seems to be working. So let's just have a... There you go. It's quite hard to see actually because I don't really have a microscope, but that's been polished out, and the little nub's gone, and it's got a nice little half moon in there now, which is what it needs. Excuse my fingernails. So we're struggling a little bit with the top pivot. When I turned the watch over, it wasn't quite shimmering as well as it should. So let me do something with that. To do that, I'm going to take the top jewel off and just have a quick look at it and make sure it's okay. A half round punch for pushing the jewels out. So what we see here is the cap jewel. So it's important that the flat surface, the inner surface of the cap jewel, is at the same level as the brass rim, generally speaking, because you don't want there to be too much of a distance between the cap jewel and the top of the hole jewel. Okay, so this is your hole jewel. So the hole jewel has a cup on one side, which is on the other side of this picture, and that's where the pivot goes into. On the other side it has a dome. So the dome doesn't want to be too far below that flange just there. Otherwise the pivot won't reach the cap, and if it doesn't reach the cap it'll run too slowly. It'll cause friction basically. So the other thing I wanted to show you there was the flange. Do you see that flange there? Okay, so the thickness of that flange controls the end shake of the watch. You can do it also with the bottom jewel, but the bottom jewel has another function. It has to keep the balance wheel pushed up above the top plate, so you can't muck around with the bottom one quite as much as you can with the top one. Okay, so this is a homemade tool, and essentially it's calibrated. This one's actually for an Elgin. It's calibrated so that it has the correct depth there, and it's just used so as you move it along you look sideways under the watch and you can see if this is parallel to the plates or not, or if it's been bent down or bent up or curved even, and it's just used for checking that really. And I'm just going to check that now, and it does look okay. Okay, so I have filed a little bit on the flange rim flatter so that it goes closer to the cap jewel, which hopefully will help solve the problem a little bit. And then your jewel needs to go in there. So if you've got a jewel that is in any way slack or loose, the watch won't regulate properly. You'll have trouble getting it to run. So you must make sure these are a good fit and very firmly down. And it's always a good practice to check the back and make sure that they look like they're straight. So the cap jewel just drops in, and then put the screws back on. Okay, so if you get the wheel chock on, and then it's a matter of adjusting the height once it's actually on the watch. So that's the balance wheel back on the watch now, and it is shimmering just nicely. I can't really show you upside down, but it is much improved upside down than it was before. So the next thing to try now is to put the fork only on the plates with the wheel and make sure it swings properly. Okay, when you see something rotating a fixed number of times and then stopping, it's usually one of the rotational wheels that's causing the problem and not the fork. But one of the checks that you should do with the fork is just check it goes into the pivot hole and it doesn't stick. Because if it sticks, then as the watch runs, it'll very, very slowly work its way into the hole and jam the watch. So that's coming out of there pretty easily. There's not a problem there. So we'll now try that on the plate. So it's in the pivot and then pull straight up. And if it comes out easily, then it's not sticking. So you're okay. So that's our fork mounted up. Sorry about the depth of field, folks. So we're just checking that it swings freely with the fork. Which it does seem to do. So we now know that that's not the problem, except that we fixed that little nub, which might have been part of the issue. Okay, so one of the things to do is to go through, if you've got problems where you're losing power in the train, especially if you've been taking cogs from other watches, is to go through and just you push the cog firmly home like that and then lift it up vertically. If you feel any kind of resistance or it tries to bring the plate with it, then you may have a problem with a pivot that's just a little bit too large. So I'm not going to do all these because I've been through them all and they're mostly okay, but when I put the seconds wheel in there, I do get a bit of sticking there, so I'm going to just polish that a little bit because that could be one of the things that's possibly causing the problem. So I'll put some charge on it and just check the banking pins are okay. Well, that's not particularly good, so maybe it's something else. No, it's still doing it. I thought maybe the spring height had something to do with it, but it doesn't. But that is how you adjust the height anyway. So this is like a sustain test. So if you got everything in there except the fork is not in there. So if you then push this, if it stops straight away like that, there's generally too much resistance in the train. It should move forwards with a bit of sustain and keep rolling. It's also worth going around at least one revolution so that you make sure there are no sticky points. That doesn't look particularly good actually, so I think we need to do a little bit of work on that. So we put the first two cogs in. You can see how they spin freely. And that, when I take the tweezers away, you can see they're still going. That's what I mean by sustain. So this is the seconds wheel. So you watch this. See how that stops straight away? And it doesn't spin so freely. In a good watch, you should see all four of the cogs spinning really freely, and it shouldn't stop like that. So that seconds wheel is slowing up this movement. So if we take a look at the seconds wheel pivot there, you should be able to just see that it's very elongated, and that almost certainly is the problem, because that will cause the cogs to jam if it's too far gone. And that, I mean, that's almost a full diameter of the pivot. So yeah, it probably will cause a problem. So now we've got all three cogs in, and we've adjusted the pivot on the seconds wheel, and you look at it now. See how that sustains completely? Absolutely brilliant. So I'll put the escape in there and just see if we get the same. So we now put the escape wheel in and try it again, and you can see it's reticent again, it's stopping straight away again. So you can see now, if I made a small adjustment to the pivots, and if I push it now, you can see how it sustains. So if you watch the large wheel, you see the large wheel just keeping moving like that. That is a much freer movement. As soon as I take that tweezer off it, it stays moving. There's a lot of momentum there. So it wasn't doing that before, and it's amazing just how much difference those elongated pivots can make. And there we go. She's a runner. Whoa, she stopped. Well, I haven't put the screw in yet, so there could still be problems. There you go, that's the screw down, and the watch is running. Well, that's the end of this little video, folks. Thanks very much for watching. Fixing Walthams, 1883, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye.